And so, and if we found out that, 30, 40 years ago that this doesn't necessarily work, then why are we still doing it now?
Well, for me, what I struggle with is that it is clear to me that lecturing does not work for high school students, elementary school students. It doesn't work at all, right? Students need the opportunity to talk to each other. They need the opportunity to think, and they need to be able to transfer whatever knowledge they have. However, when you get to college, it is extremely traditional. And then when you get a job, depending on if it's a city job, depending on whatever occupation you take, you need to be able to sit and listen. You need to be able to write. You need to be able to take a standardized test. You need to be able to do all the things that we say that does not work for students in high school, middle school, elementary school.
Okay.
And so the problem for me is that, and I struggle with this a lot because schools do a really good job of differentiating, and I feel like do a really good job of making students feel empowered and making them feel good about themselves and making them understand that if you don't get it, there are so many other people who can help you to get it. But once you leave 12th grade and you go out there on your own and you go to college or whatever it is, you need to be able to function in that very traditional way that we have said does not work for students.
And then colleges complain that when the students get to college, they're not prepared because they're making us do all these group projects, and you don't have to write an essay to demonstrate that you can tell the central idea of this poem. You can just give a presentation, or you can do a speech, or you can do something like that. But when it comes to writing a paper, they struggle. And so you want us to do all these things that when they go to college or go into the workforce, like Michelle said, they don't know how to do it because they want us to give these other options, which are great for students to demonstrate that they are mastering a standard or something like that. But it conflicts with what's expected once they leave high school.
Okay, so I guess I can just jump right in there because that's I know, like, as a lecturer for the City University of New York, I come into a situation where students aren't prepared. And I wouldn't necessarily say, I've encountered some, but I wouldn't necessarily say that the writing isn't up to par. There are definitely those students, and those students I'll just send, like, to the writing center, like, listen, I've tried to read the paper, and then the writing is so bad that it, or the grammar and that type of stuff is so bad that it obstructs the content of the paper. And in that instance, I'm just sending student to the writing center because I only have 16 weeks in the semester. I can't sit here and I can't teach grammar. We're not going to learn how to diagram sentences. I don't have that time, right? But what I think is missing once the student gets to college is that critical thinking aspect. And I definitely know that there's an adjustment, right? Because I can even say, I didn't necessarily, I went through the public school system from kindergarten to 8th grade, but those were quote unquote, I went to a magnet school back in the day, right? And then I went to a parochial high school. And I can honestly say that, going from there and then wound up going to Spelman, I don't think that my high school prepared me the way that I should have been prepared. But it was more of an adjustment, like, okay, maybe I need to employ some new study techniques or whatever so that I can compete with the level of student or the caliber of student that's here. But these kids just lack the critical thinking ability, and it's just about regurgitation. I think as an English instructor, I like to give my students a certain amount of leeway. I wouldn't necessarily say that my assignments are abstract, but abstract enough where you can create, you have a realm of creativity, right? I'm letting you do what you want to do. These are the parameters, but I've had so many students just like, they're frightened by that. I want stricter guidelines. Do you mean you want this? Do you mean you want that? And I don't want to I feel like if I give, that's stifling. So how do we help students to make that adjustment from high school to college? And you have all of these schools now where they're saying they're college preparatory and that sort of thing or whatever, but are they actually preparing students for college? Because in my experience, I would say that no, they're not prepared. They're not prepared to do that, the level of thinking that's required of them in higher education.
I think you have to take into consideration also their home life because even though they spend most of their day in a school building, what happens when they leave the school building also impacts how they develop. And so you might have students that have to go home and cook for their younger siblings, have to pick up their younger siblings. They don't get home until 9 o'clock, or their parents want them to be in extracurricular activities, so their homework is not up to par and things of that sort. But to really answer your question, I think when it comes to critical thinking and like that freedom to think, students are afraid of it, and they want to be told what to do because that's what they've been used to. So the shift with Common Core, I think we're getting into a place where we're requiring literacy in all content areas. So for math, for science, you have to have all these abstract and open-ended questions where students have to actually do a lot of research and just have a dialogue with each other to come to an answer. And so being consistent with that, just continuing to give them multiple opportunities, not just once a semester or once a trimester for the large paper. You have to always give students that opportunity to think. You have to build in a culture of inquiry for the students in order for them to think critically. And it has to be, parents have to be on board with it. What conversations are you having at home with your child? Are you speaking to your child? Some parents work 2 or 3 jobs and they don't have that chance to do that. And so what other spaces can students interact with besides Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and all that stuff where they are constantly being asked questions for them to think and not be told what to think, but teach how to think. Taught how to think, excuse me.
Just to add to that, I would say, and that has to happen prior to high school, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
it can't
Definitely.
So it can't happen that from kindergarten to 8th grade, your focus is to find the right answer. And then you get to high school and everybody's like, no, I want you to think critically. I want you to question me. I want you to ask me why or tell me why that answer is the right answer. That it just doesn't work because you've been trained to find the right answer for so long. And so, 2 things stick out to me is that one, if what we want is for students to be able to get to college and think critically, then we need to make sure that they can get to high school and be able to focus on that. Because the reality is that if you come into high school and you can't read and write, then I can't really get to a place to help you think critically, because what I'm trying to help you do is to play catch up so you could get out of here. Not because I'm trying to rush you out of high school, but because I know that if you stay a semester after everyone else in your cohort has graduated, chances are you're not going to want to graduate and you're going to drop out. And so it's that struggle where schools are like, do I create a space for you to get out of high school and pass all these tests and get all the credit you need? Or do I really focus on helping you to think and learn? And if I help you to think and learn, then my numbers and my statistics look crazy. And then I am held accountable to someone else who doesn't understand why I said you need 1 more year in high school. And so the only way for us to get to the point where our students are able to focus on that is to make sure that in the younger grades, they're able to do that.